You're watching The Roundtable with Tony Brar and Brenden Escott on BTIHockey.com.
Welcome to episode 2 of The Roundtable on BTI Hockey. I'm Tony Brar, this is Brenden Escott, and we are covering a lot of things, so let's get straight to it. Brenden, what's on the schedule for today?
Starting with the Oilers talk, as we always will, we're going to move into the Pacific Division standings as they are right now, and then as we think they might be come season's end.
Okay, let's get straight into it. We are talking Edmonton Oilers. They looked so good on Saturday night with a 4-3 win over the Detroit Red Wings. However, on Tuesday night against the Islanders, a not so great performance. A 4-1 loss to the Islanders and John Tavares. But what about David Desharnais? I mean, he's come in, we've only seen him for 2 games. He was 14:28 of ice time in the first game, 10:40 in the second. 1 assist in the first game, -1 in the second. What do you think of his performance so far?
To be expected, I think that really he wasn't going to come in here and blow the roof off of the Oilers organization at all. They acknowledged that right as they made that move. But he's brought here to fill a niche role, and as a smaller guy in the bottom 6, you have to be able to win faceoffs to me as a center, obviously. So yeah. He hasn't really been doing that. A career 50.4% clip, if I'm not mistaken, and Tony not as successful so far in his first couple games.
I mean,
in Orange and Blue.
In the first game against Detroit, he had an 18% faceoff win percentage, and he had 25 on Tuesday night. I think it may be too early to kind of grade how that acquisition has been so far, but definitely a cause for concern for me, especially in that faceoff dot. That's one of his niches. That's one of his primary roles in the bottom 6. Definitely something the Oilers should be looking into.
I think so as well. Now, we know that there are a couple interchangeable pieces for Desharnais. If he needs to spend a night or two in the press box to kind of gather his thoughts, so be it. There's guys that can fill that role, but I don't understand because face-off skill isn't something that really would stay back with him in Montreal, if you know what I mean. Like that's a pretty pointed thing that shouldn't have any mental impact necessarily. So to see that much of a drop-off just because he changed teams, it's a little bit concerning.
Absolutely. Let's jump right over into the Edmonton Oilers Pacific Division, where they are currently second, right above Anaheim and Calgary. What's your take on this? I mean, it's very interesting because Edmonton and Anaheim both have 78 points, but Calgary's right behind them with 76.
Blazing. The Flames are as hot as can be, pardon the pun, but they've won 8 of their last 10 games. They've picked up points in 9 of their last 10, and they're right on suddenly 2 points back of the top 3 in the Pacific Division. So right now in the stretch drive of the playoffs, as that's amping up, they're peaking at the right time and finally getting some good goaltending on Brian Elliott.
Yeah, led by Brian Elliott. I mean, the turnaround started when Gulletson called out his players after that disastrous effort in Montreal. And you know what? The players have responded appropriately, winning 9 of the last 10, as you mentioned. 76 points, only 2 points behind Anaheim and Edmonton, but I see them catching up to Edmonton, to be honest. If I may be 100% honest, I know that's what we might not want to hear in oil country, but I mean, how can you doubt them?
I think they've got a little bit more experience in terms of the playoffs and having been there before. They've got some guys on the back end and Giordano and Brian Elliott's been there, of course. So that might be the difference maker. I think the oil look good, and don't get me wrong in saying this, but I don't know if they're quite there yet. They're stumbling. They're 6-4 in their last 10, and it's getting to be that time of the season, especially with their cross-provincial rival here on their heels. It's time to go, and they haven't been doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Oilers are just starting to learn how to win. They're coming out of a decade of losing. It takes time. A transition doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take a little bit of time, as evident in their last 2 games. You're either going to be really, really good, or you're going to really, really struggle. And that's what happens with the young team.
So when April turns to May, Tony, how do you see the Pacific Division shaking down when the playoffs are suddenly upon us? Do you think the Oilers can stick around on one of the top seeds, or do they maybe slip into a wild card spot?
I personally see the Oilers finishing in 3rd, with Calgary finishing in 2nd, and Anaheim getting the first wild card spot. And I actually believe the LA Kings will catch up to St. Louis. I know they're 3 points back right now with the same amount of games played, but I think they'll catch up to them. They got Jonathan Quick coming back from injury. They got Ben Bishop as their backup, and they have Anze Kopitar, Tyler Toffoli, who aren't really performing to their standards right now. Expect them to play better down the stretch drive.
Certainly, the Kings are a team you can never rule out of the playoff conversation. This would have been the first year in a long time I think that they've missed. And their top players just haven't been performing to the standard that we know that they can't. Toffoli's a 30-goal scorer. Kopitar, year in and year out, has the potential to be a 30-goal scorer. So I agree. I think they've just, pure talent-wise, and that's not even talking about the experience difference, they're going to jump St. Louis, I think, by the time that the playoffs actually kick off.
And they have that experience in the playoffs, so once they get in the playoffs, don't count them out, because anything could happen in the playoffs, as evident by the 06 Edmonton Oilers.
So if the Oilers, Tony, need to stick into that second or third playoff spot, what do you think that it really is going to take out of them down the stretch drive in order to remain one of the top contending teams of the Pacific Division?
The Oilers have to continue to do what made them successful in the first half of the season. That's getting in the corners, that's getting in front of the net. You look at the additions that Peter Chiarelli made, Patrick Maroon, Zach Kassian, those are guys that get into the corners and in front of the net. So I believe if they continue to do that and play that grinding playoff type hockey, they'll do just fine.
These guys were brought in here to muck and grind, absolutely, get down there. And the performance out of Patrick Maroon all season long has superseded, I think, anything that they would have expected. To the opposite end of that, Lucic has been a bit of a disappointment, but he's a guy that brings a lot of experience to the table. He might have to step up here and put the rest of these youngsters on his back in order to get them to where they want to be come the end of April.
And Milan Lucic's playoff experience could become invaluable for players like Connor McDavid, Jordan Eberle, guys who haven't really tasted the beauty of Stanley Cup playoffs before, and I believe that's going to be such a big asset for the Edmonton Oilers come playoff time.
So that does it for episode 2 of the Roundtable here on BTI. We want to know what you think. Where are the Oilers going to fall? Where are the Flames going to fall? Whatever your thoughts are, tweet us. I'm at Brenden Escott 5.
And I'm at Tony Brar _.
And of course, hit us up as well at Below the Ice. That's on Twitter.
Thanks for tuning in today, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Go to btihockey.com for all your latest in-depth news around the NHL. Hope you have a great day.
We'll see you next week.